They told the coordinator I contributed 0%. Zero. After I'd basically lived inside that project for 7 straight weeks, coding until my eyes burned, writing diagrams at 2 a.m., and still dragging myself to lectures like a zombie. And the worst part? They didn't even hesitate. They all agreed on the lie like it was nothing. That's when I stopped being the reliable guy in the group and started treating this like what it really was, a straight-up attempt to steal my grade. I'm a computer science student, and we had a group project worth a huge chunk of the module. It was split into 2 parts. Part A, build an application and write a report explaining it. Part B, take feedback from Part A, improve the project, and submit an upgraded version with an updated report. The project had one feature that was supposed to stop freeloaders. We had to submit a contribution report where each person estimated how much work everyone did. The idea was simple. If someone did nothing, it would show. That system only works if people tell the truth. I got randomly assigned to a group of 5, me and 4 other students. In the first meeting, everyone grabbed a piece of the workload. I ended up taking around half of the coding because, honestly, I was the most confident programmer in that group, and I didn't want us to fail. I told myself it was fine. Do the hard part early, and the rest will be smooth. I finished my portion of the code in about 3 weeks. I still remember the relief. Finally pushing that last feature, seeing the app actually run, and thinking, okay, we're on track. Then the messages started. One teammate, hey, can you help me with my part? I'm stuck. Another, can you just take a look? Mine isn't working. Then, can you maybe just do it? You'll do it faster. At first I pushed back. I had deadlines in other classes. I had labs, I had exams. I was not trying to adopt 4 grown adults, but they kept pressing, and they were good at playing it casual, like I was being dramatic. So I made one condition crystal clear. Fine, I'll do the extra code, but it goes in the contribution report. I'm not taking credit for your work, and I'm not giving you credit for mine. They all agreed immediately, way too quickly. Like they didn't even care, because in their heads they'd already decided they'd handle that part later. I spent the next 3 weeks grinding. I'm not exaggerating. I was juggling other assignments while writing their features, patching bugs, integrating everything, cleaning up their half-finished branches, and turning it into one functioning application. It wasn't just coding. It was writing the logic, merging everything so it didn't break, refactoring the messy parts, testing fixing edge cases, getting it stable enough that we could actually submit without embarrassment. I was living on caffeine in spite. At one point, I messaged the module coordinator privately. Not to complain, just to ask what my options were if the group wasn't pulling their weight. He gave me advice that was both helpful and terrifying. If they're not contributing, you can leave the group, take your code, and submit solo. That's the nuclear option. And in theory, it's fair. In practice, it would have been a disaster, because it was a week before the deadline. If I walked away then, I'd have to throw together the entire report alone from scratch, last minute, while also doing everything else in my schedule. I didn't trust myself to pull that off cleanly. So I stayed. I told myself, just get the grade. You can deal with the politics later. Then it got worse. They wanted help with the report too, because, as it turned out, they didn't understand the code. Which makes sense because they hadn't written it. I remember staring at my screen thinking, so I'm building the app, and explaining the app, and they're going to walk away smiling like we're a team? But again, grade. Finish part A. Survive. So I helped. I wrote diagrams. I explained modules. I contributed a chunk of the report because I didn't want us to submit garbage. That's when they tried the move that still blows my mind. One of them messaged the group chat like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. Maybe we should all put 20% each in the contribution report. It'll look better as a team. I felt my stomach drop. They weren't just freeloading. They wanted me to co-sign the lie. I wrote back immediately, no, absolutely not. I did most of the work. I'm not pretending otherwise. The tone changed instantly. No more friendly emojis, no more bro, can you help? They started swearing at me, calling me selfish, calling me names, acting like I was betraying them by refusing to give them my work for free. And then, straight up, Fuck you. Cool. So I submitted my contribution report honestly. I put myself at 60% and gave each of them 10%. I thought that would be it. Ugly, but done. Then the coordinator contacted me. Do you have proof? I didn't understand at first. Proof of what? Then he explained. They had all submitted their own contribution reports claiming I did 0%, and each of them did 25%. I stared at that email for a long time. There's this moment where your brain tries to protect you by going, maybe it's a misunderstanding. And then reality hits. No, they coordinated that. They agreed to that. They decided to try to erase me. I'd put in over 150 hours of coding, actual tracked time where I was actively working, plus another 50-ish hours on diagrams and the report. That was on top of around 20 hours a week of lectures. Over 7 weeks, that's basically. Lectures, assignments, and then 4 extra hours a day of project work every single day. And these people were trying to tell the university I did nothing. So yeah, I had proof. We use GitHub to collaborate, which is a version control system that logs commits. Who changed what, when, and exactly what they added. I sent the coordinator the GitHub link and showed the commit history. It was almost embarrassing how clear it was. Commit after commit after commit. My name, my account, my timestamps, my changes, the group's contribution, basically non-existent. And the report was on Google Drive, so I also pulled the edit history and screenshots showing that I'd written a significant chunk of the documentation too, around 20% of the report. The coordinator did the math and made an exception for our group. He told me he would award marks based on actual contribution. I ended up getting roughly 65% of the credit for Part A. They got around 11% each. And here's the hilarious twist. To pass the module, you needed 69% overall. So when the marks dropped, I didn't just get justice, I got chaos. My phone blew up for hours. Calls, emails, messages, voice notes, pure panic, rage, and bargaining. I didn't answer. I was out walking, and for once, I didn't even have my phone on me. I wasn't going to stand there getting screamed at by people who tried to erase me. The coordinator emailed them explaining what happened. They lied, there was evidence, and he adjusted the grades accordingly. That should have been the end. But I'm petty in a very organized way. I screenshotted every message. I saved every voice note, including the earlier ones where they told me to go to hell. Then I forwarded all of it to the coordinator and said, I want to be removed from this group. Yes, it meant more work for me later. I knew that, but I wasn't doing another phase of this project with 4 people who tried to frame me. The coordinator agreed. He informed the others. And at that point, I officially left the group. Part B was mine now, and I took my code with me. I asked the coordinator first, because I'm not stupid, and I'm not trying to violate academic rules. He confirmed it. The code I wrote was mine, and if I was no longer in their group, they had no right to use it. So I revoked their access, removed them from the repositories, locked everything. I watched their digital lifeline vanish. Then I fixed the serious error I'd made in Part A. Because yes, despite doing most of the work, I still messed up something important. I implemented the MVC structure incorrectly in a way that cost the project a lot of marks. That mistake hurt, because it was my fault. But I also knew exactly what to do to fix it. It took me about 2 weeks to correct the architecture and clean up the code properly. Then came the monster, the report. For Part B, I essentially rewrote it from near scratch, plus I added a full section explaining the fixes and improvements. That took around 7 weeks of steady work. It was brutal, but it was clean. And here's the thing, working alone was exhausting, but also peaceful. No group chat drama, no begging, no pretending, no, can you do mine too? Just work. A couple days before the deadline, guess who resurfaced? My old group. Suddenly they were polite. Suddenly they were desperate. Please come back. We really need you. We'll do anything. One of them even offered me money. Money. Like I was a freelancer they forgot to pay until the final hour. I screenshotted that too and forwarded it to the coordinator, so he'd have the full timeline. then ignored them completely. I submitted Part B 2 weeks early, and I got 100%. That kind of score is rare even with a functioning group. Doing it solo after that mess felt unreal. I was finally breathing again. Then I got an email that made my blood turn cold. It was from the university's academic integrity/plagiarism office. The subject line might as well have been, "We're about to ruin your life." They told me I was being called to a hearing because an external review panel had flagged my new submission and my old group's submission as too similar. They attached both versions so I could prepare a response, and I opened them and immediately understood what happened. They had my code, not inspired by, not similar approach. They had my code. I messaged the coordinator right away. "Will you support me in this hearing?" Because in these situations, universities sometimes go lazy. They punish everyone involved just to make it simple. He replied quickly, "Yes, I'll back you." Good. Now I got surgical. I went back through hundreds of old commits from the time when they still had access, hunting for the exact version they stole. I needed the perfect match, the commit that would prove they didn't just learn from me. They cloned it, and I found it. A commit with 0 differences compared to their final submission. Not one character, thousands of lines, identical. Hearing day comes. I walk into a room with my old group and a senior university official, the kind of person who can absolutely destroy your academic record if you mess this up. They let my old group speak first, and they did what liars always do when they think they can talk their way out. They said they did the work themselves. They claimed I barely contributed. They acted like I was just bitter. They talked for 10 minutes. Then it was my turn. I asked permission to share my screen. The official looked surprised but agreed, and I laid it all out. I showed the messages where they demanded I do their work, the part where they proposed the fake 20% each, split the screenshots where they begged me to come back, the messages where they offered money, and finally, the GitHub history. Then I downloaded the latest version of their project and pulled up the exact commit from my repository. I ran a file comparison tool and narrated what I was doing so there was no confusion. It took a minute, and then the result showed what I already knew. 0 differences. The room went dead. One of them mumbled something like, I laughed. I couldn't help it. The absurdity of watching them lie for 10 minutes just to get instantly flattened by evidence was too much. The official told me I could leave because I was no longer the subject of the investigation. I walked out while they stayed behind. Here's what happened. According to someone I know who's friends with one of them, they had cloned one of my commits and saved it locally before I cut off their access. They couldn't fix the bug, couldn't improve anything, couldn't write a proper Part B, and just submitted what they had, hoping it would slide through. It didn't. They failed the project. Their Part B score was a 0. Overall, they ended up with something like 5.5% for the module. To pass, you needed at least 40%. So they had to retake it in the summer, and that had consequences they deserved. They were in internship programs tied to their academic progression. When they failed the module and got flagged for academic dishonesty, they lost those placements. That's roughly $20,000 each in lost internship income for the year. All because they wanted a free grade and thought they could bully the one person actually doing the work. Meanwhile, I passed. I got my 100%. And I learned something I will never forget. If someone tries to steal your work, don't argue louder. Document everything. Then let the receipts do the damage.
That's where the story ends. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of this story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel and see you next time.